Good morning and welcome to the Point. As the election draws nearer, we continue to take a look at important races, some of which you will have to decide. If you live in certain parts of Kent County, the 29th Senate race is one you'll want to pay attention to. This morning, we talked to incumbent Republican Senator Dave Hildbrandt and Democratic challenger Lance Penny. Well, let's start with this. Not the first time we've had this conversation. Here you are, prepared to run for what would be your last term in the state legislature. What makes you want to run for the final 4 years?
Well, it's been an honor and a privilege representing this community in the Michigan legislature. And when I ran for office, I was concerned about our state, the future of our state. And so I wanted to go to Lansing and see what I could do to create a stronger, better future for Michigan. And over the last few years, I think we've made some progress in a lot of areas. And the all indicators are saying that we're on a better path. But we still have a lot more work to do. We have a fragile economy yet, although it's a lot better than it was 4 years ago in 2009 and 10, when we were at the peak of our unemployment at 15.2% of our able-bodied adults weren't able to find work, and now we're about half that. So we're on a better track, but we still have a lot of work to do, and so I'll be campaigning this fall for re-election of the Michigan Senate.
When you look at that unemployment rate that you mentioned, we look at it now, if you just look at raw numbers, you still think it's 7.5% of the people that are unemployed. That's really a big number, and it's very, creates a lot of distress, not just for them and their families, but for the economy. But when you figure that is just half of what it was, how much stronger is the economy, even though you say it is still fragile?
Yeah, it's gotten a lot better. It really has. And it's been a number of efforts to get us to this point. It's just not one silver bullet that got us there, and government can't take all the credit. You know, we have hardworking men and women and employers who've taken risks to employ people and build and expand and grow their businesses here in Michigan. So a lot of credit goes to them. But what we've tried to do is create a better environment so people feel confident about doing business in Michigan, about making more economic investments in Michigan. And by creating that better environment through better taxation, better regulations, and a stronger and more balanced state budget, that creates a good reputation for our state across the nation and across the world, so people feel more comfortable and more confident in our state. You know, it's just a competitive global economy now, and we don't have to worry just about competing with our neighboring states in the Great Lakes region. We have to worry about states in the South, states out west and in the Southwest, and then all around the globe. So we've just been working hard to reform our tax structure, reform our regulations in the state to make them user-friendly and customer-friendly, and really to create a balanced, sound state budget.
Competitiveness when it comes to attracting new businesses or getting existing businesses to expand depends at least partially on infrastructure, and that's been a big discussion back in 1996 when John Engler came up with Build Michigan 2. That was thought to be a big deal to help build roads in Michigan, and indeed it did build roads, but it didn't necessarily pay for all the roads that were built. Now this governor, Rick Snyder, says we may be 1.2, others say $1.5 billion a year that we need to invest for the next 10 years. I know how tough it was for you in the Senate towards the end, prior to going back for this part of the summer. You took, those last couple of days before you took a break in the late spring or early summer, trying to do something for road financing, didn't quite get there. Any chance any of that gets discussed before the election?
I think we'll always be investing more and more into our state's infrastructure. The debate that we had was really how to do that. And the good news is we were able to invest almost $1 billion in additional revenues for our infrastructure over the next 2 years. So in addition to the over $3 billion that we already spend annually in the state, we'll see that a significant amount more. And I think we'll start to see improvements. Everyone is now complaining about all the construction that is going on now, but that's a good thing because we're rebuilding our infrastructure and making those improvements that we need. And so we'll continue to talk about maybe how to even do more and how to get there, but there really isn't total agreement on really how to get a permanent long-term revenue stream for our infrastructure at this point.
In the few seconds we have left, if there was one thing that you could get done, if you are successful in November and you're there for your final term in the state Senate, is there one particular thing you can think of you'd like to do?
I want to continue my work in supporting our veterans in this state. We have one of two of the state-owned veterans facilities right here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I've been there a lot. I want to support our veterans who have served this country. There are a lot more that we can do, and I want to continue to support them at the home through state resources and other programs around the state as our men and women who serve this country get older. We need to support them. Those that are young and coming back from service, we need to help them get the jobs and employment and housing that they need. So I want to continue to build that infrastructure to support our men and women who serve this great country.
We sit down some 7 weeks, a little less than 7 weeks before this general election, and I always start at the same place. What makes you decide to run for an office like this?
Well, as I told you a minute ago, I mean, part of it is party loyalty. I want the Democrats to have a strong ticket, and some people approached me and asked me to run, so I said I would. But it takes more than that. You need more motivation than that. And for me, a lot of it's about my kids. I mean, I've got 3 kids in elementary school. I want Michigan to be the great place, as great a place as it can be. And I think there's a need for change in this district. I haven't been happy with the representation that we've been getting from the incumbent. And I want to change things. So there's a lot of issues, a lot of things that I want to see changed.
Well, let's talk about specifics. What would you like to change? Obviously, as a Democrat, you've spent the last 4 years seeing the Republican Party in charge of the governor's office, all the constitutional offices, Supreme Court, the state Senate, and the state House. So that's a lot of control that's not in control of the party that you're a part of. So what beyond that control would you like to change?
Well, you mentioned the Republican dominance in Lansing, and that's an important thing because I don't think, just on a kind of political science level, that giving one party that much control is just a good thing in general. And I think we've seen the results of that with not very good policy. But getting into specific issues, I want to put more money back into education. Obviously, somewhat out of self-interest. I have kids in public school, and I want to see the schools be as good as they can be. We've got a big problem with roads. And coming back to that partisan control thing, that's a proposal that the governor put out, and he's not getting his own legislature to pass it. And so that gets to what I think is really the kind of overarching issue in Lansing is the role and influence of big money, lobbyists, all that sort of special interest influence. That's really my big issue. I want to reform the way lobbying works so that they have a lot less influence. I want to reform the way campaigns are financed to cut down the special interest influence in elections. And I want to get back to what some other states have done, which is a nonpartisan commission to draw the district lines. I think that part of the partisan imbalance, a big part of it has to do with the way the district lines are drawn. And let's be fair, I mean, if the Democrats had controlled the last redistricting, it might be unfair in our favor. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of states have used this nonpartisan commission to draw their district lines, and they've come up with more competitive districts, which makes, I think, for a better campaign season, and a more balanced kind of representation, which I think is what we need. I mean, the best policy is in the center, and we need to get to a more balanced partisan situation in Lansing.
Let me go back for a minute to the roads, because you said a couple of interesting things. One is, as you point out, the governor said that he wanted 1.2 and something that's $1.5 billion a year, more money than's already being spent, and for the next 10 years. But I don't know that he ever specified a particular plan. He left it up to the legislature to come up to a plan, and there were a couple of plans that were kind of knocked around out there. But then you tied that to lobbyists. Do you think that lobbyists somehow got in the way of that deal?
I do. Well, first of all, I think it's worth pointing out that the governor, although he talked a good ball game, didn't lead. He needed to come with some specifics to the legislature and actually advocate for certain things, which he didn't do, which is another reason why we need a new governor. But the lobby, see, the problem with these proposals is that, if you want to raise, say you want to raise the fees on heavy trucks, well, there's, various lobbies that are against that. You want to raise the gas tax. Well, especially the Republicans have signed no tax pledges with these various lobbying groups. So, and you can go down the line through a lot of different policy specifics, and you're going to find some powerful lobby against all of them, which is, I think, a big part of why there's nothing happening. The other part of the roads thing is that partisan imbalance, and I think there's not the political pressure on the Republican majority the way there was with the minimum wage. They were afraid of the ballot initiative. I don't think there's that same level of political pressure, even though polling shows that people want the roads fixed. I don't think there's a direct, you know what I mean? There's not a direct political thing like an initiative coming that they're afraid of. So, it's a combination of a lot of things, but the heavy influence of special interest money is a big, big impediment to getting the roads fixed, I think.
When we come back, we'll feature yet another Senate district race. That's next. To the Point. Welcome back to the Point. The 34th Senate District includes the city of Muskegon and is currently represented by Republican Jeff Hanson. He faces Democratic challenger Kathy Forbes. Senator, you're running for what, if you are successful in November, will be your final term in the Senate. What motivates you after all that time in the House and the first term in the Senate to run again?
Well, Rick, I got to tell you, as I'm running for re-election for the same reason I ran for election the first time, is I care and I believe in our community. We've got some great things going on. I mean, I look at the difference in the number of jobs that we have in this area. Our unemployment in my district is down 40% since 2010. And that's not people quit looking for work. That's 7,100 more jobs in the area. And it's just it's an amazing thing to me. I go around to the different manufacturers and businesses, and they're all telling me the same thing, is they're looking for people. They got to have the skills, and they have to be able to show up to work every day and on time and those type of things. But they would love more people. I've been to over 105 different manufacturers and businesses. It's been I love to go tour them and sit down and talk to them, see how things are going, see what we can do to help. So it's been eye-opening experience, because I really believe that Michigan has turned, but we're not there. We're not done. We have to continue making sure that our businesses are strong and making sure that the jobs are available for our hardworking people.
That is an interesting story that you tell, because it was not so long ago that you could come to your district, that includes Muskegon, where we're sitting now, and points to the north, and have some of the highest unemployment that we had in the West Michigan area. So that has turned around, and those numbers is significant. What do you hear from people, not just employers? What do you hear from other folks? I mean, do you get a general sense that people feel better about the way things are going now?
I really do. I have a sense of optimism around the area that I hadn't felt before. And personally, I'm more optimistic than I've been in a long, long time for the way that we're going. It's a different atmosphere. It's a different attitude. I see people are, they're willing to invest. It's got to the point where people are willing to add on to their business, invest in more people, because they were a little skittish back in 10, 11. Even as things started getting better, it took time for them to understand that this is going to be a long-term, sustained recovery.
Obviously, jobs will remain very important for you if you're successful in November, because there are always jobs issues, even statewide, obviously, still looking for that full recovery. What else is it that you would like to focus on if the election goes your way in November? What do you want to focus on come January?
Well, I think, because we do have a lot of jobs available, but part of the problem is we don't have people trained or have the education that fits into some of those jobs. So I think that looking at our education, trying to fit jobs and people together a little better, and working with our education around this area has been really good about working with our manufacturers and businesses on the needs that they have to try and get them so they're in line with each other a little better. And it's going really well. I think we need to have more discussion about that. Our career tech education around here is just amazing. We've got 2 world-class tech centers between Muskegon and Fremont. So we need to make sure that they have what they need to continue to teach our kids the things that they need to be successful. And we need to work with our manufacturers to make sure that they're coming out with the things they need to be successful.
This governor, and to some degree the last governor, talked about this too, but do you find that we need to have more of that conversation about technical education out in the communities? Because when you and I were in high school, the push was you got to go to college. Everybody's got to get a college education. That's how you're going to be successful. And it seems, and at least from my perception, and I think, again, from what the last two governors have talked about a little bit, that people have underestimated the value of some of those technical jobs, some which, by the way, pay quite well, and those are some of the jobs that are available. Do we need to make people understand that that's a good career choice?
I think that let's not underplay how important college is.
Right.
Because it is. But there are opportunities with maybe a 2-year degree or with a technical degree of some sort, or getting the things that they need. And I believe that there's a lot of opportunity there. And we do need to talk, and it's, have to talk to our schools, we have to talk to our parents, we have to let people understand. I think it's a great chance for our young people to have good careers.
You, like anybody who's running for office, follows the time-honored tradition of knocking on doors. So let me ask you a question I think you've heard at doors before. What's going to happen with Michigan roads?
I think Michigan roads, I think we are on the track to get something done. We've put $1 billion in the last year and a half of dollars out of our budget, but it's not sustainable. We have to find something that's sustainable, but then as we do that, we have to be very careful, because there's been people are focusing on our state roads, and our state roads they're okay, but our local roads are the ones that have been taking the most damage, and we need to make sure that we get the dollars down to where we need them in the local roads, because I'll tell you, they're crumbling bad in the local.
I love to start with folks and ask them why, because there are a lot of people who say, we ought to do something about X or Y, but they don't ever make that leap into actually running for office to try to fix whatever it is that they think needs to be fixed. Why did you decide to run?
I decided to run because I was tired of what I saw happening in Lansing. I have 2 young adult daughters, 20 and 18, both of whom can vote for me, which is wonderful. And they're tired of the state and how women are being treated. That's one issue. The other 3 big issues as well are roads, and I can explain why in a moment. Public education, because I feel it's very, very important to a fair and democratic society, and our jobs. We're still 53rd highest unemployment in the nation.
Well, let's start with roads, because that is an issue that so many candidates that have been in that chair have talked about. I think we know what the problem is. What's the solution?
Well, let me back up for a second and talk about where I've come from and how I got to talking about politics and roads. I grew up in Hesperia, which is in Oceana County. The district for state senate for the 34th district is all of Muskegon County, all of Oceana County, and all of Newaygo County. And for some of your viewers who don't know where we are, we're right on the lakeshore. Mm-hmm. So you've got Muskegon, Oceana, and then Newaygo inside. We have a lot of very wealthy communities right on the lakeshore, but inside the county, not so much. And I grew up in Hesperia, which has a huge population of free and reduced lunch in our school. So we're not talking about a wealthy area of the state. But I grew up in Hesperia, went to Hesperia High School, graduated, and I was one of those kids who could not wait to get out of town. So I went to a small school in Milwaukee and then got in the television business, ended up in New York City, selling TV shows like Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous with Robin Leach and Star Search with Ed McMahon, if you remember. And then back in Chicago, hosted a TV show called Kid Talk, met my husband, had 2 girls, and then we decided to move back to where I grew up and built a house on my parents' farm. They, of course, deeded us some land. And then in about 2006 or 7, one of the township supervisors I had grown up around said, "Kathy, we need a woman on the road commission. Run for office." And I said, "What is a road commission?" And I started doing the research and going to all the meetings, and lo and behold, I got elected in 2008. and got reelected in 2012. And apparently I'm the only woman who's ever been on the road commission there, and I'm loving it. I have found that since I was elected in 2008, everyone has been talking about road funding and nothing has happened. Absolutely nothing has happened. And so that's one of the main reasons why I feel roads are very important to the state and how we have to find a solution to this problem.
Well, what is that solution? I mean, we saw what the Senate turned itself inside out towards the end of the spring session before the summer break. They could not come up with 19 votes to raise taxes or to do any number of other things that might address the funding for roads. The House did come up with a plan, but far short of what the governor had called for. So what should be done?
Personally, I think that we cannot do it and infringe on the middle class anymore. We're paying, what, $3.50 a gallon of gas right now. I'm against raising more money on the gallon of gas, although I see the wisdom of doing it because it's a user tax. But I'm not sure how much the people of the district can handle over there. So I think that we need to start looking at the enormous tax breaks that are being given to our wonderful corporations. We do need them, yes. But we're giving $1.8 billion in corporate tax breaks. And we are funding that by the senior pension tax, which is affecting our public school employees, such as teachers. We are funding that with the reduction of the earned income tax credit, the homestead property tax credit, which affected my parents. We could be looking at a lot more revenue if we stop giving such enormous tax breaks to our corporations.
So you would be for reinstating what you say is a $1.8 billion tax break? You would tell corporations they need to start paying that again?
We need a little bit more revenue, and I don't know where else we get it. There should be a study. Someone told me that we are taking, and again, I'm not a state legislature, so I'm still trying to research and learn from everyone I can. But I was told that we are taking in approximately $40 billion a year in revenue. We could be taking in almost double that if we had absolutely no deductions whatsoever. Now, of course, that's not realistic. People need to deduct their home property taxes to encourage home ownership, of course. There are a lot of things that we would never do away with. But there are probably a lot of corporate tax deductions that we should look at. Someone should probably do a study. We probably have thousands of corporate tax deductions that we don't need in our state.
You mentioned at the very beginning of this your two daughters and the way women are treated in Michigan. What did you mean by that?
Well, what's the so-called rape insurance is one. The women's inequality when they're treated in the workplace as far as making the same for the same amount of work. There seems to be a move afoot to always have, well, I almost hate to say this, but we seem to have men always trying to judge what women should say and do in our state. And I'm personally tired of it. If elected, I tend to be a very loud voice for the people of my district in this state. A very loud voice, because I have no fear. I'm too old to have any fear. And just speak up on behalf of the people of the district and tell them the truth about what's going on in their state. My daughters, when they graduate from college, have no desire to stay here. And I find that sad. We have a gorgeous state. We have wonderful people. We have a middle class that seems to be being left in the dust from everything I can see. They are being destroyed in a sense. That's a strong word, but the middle class is not being helped by the policies of our state as we see it right now.
We're back with more To the Point in just a moment. Those are just two of some 38 Senate districts around the state you'll be asked to weigh in on. If you're not exactly sure who you'll be voting for, just go to our website and find a link. Next week, Democratic candidate for governor Mark Schauer. I hope you'll join us then. To the Point.